I'd like to talk today a little bit about a symphonic secret in Brahms' Third Symphony and how it relates to ideas of friendship and collaboration. Brahms was first really introduced to the wider musical world by the composer Robert Schumann, who became a kind of mentor to the young Brahms. In fact, Schumann went so far as to proclaim Brahms to be the kind of savior of German music, the successor to Beethoven, which is a huge thing to dump on a 20-year-old composer. But they became very, very close, and in fact, Brahms ended up moving into the Schumann's household. Schumann was married to a wonderful pianist, Clara Wieck. As they all lived together, Brahms became quite infatuated with Clara, and from all accounts, vice versa. But of course, Clara was deeply devoted to her husband, Robert, who a number of years later developed a series of mental imbalances to the point where he actually threw himself into the Rhine River at one point in an attempt of suicide. And shortly thereafter, he was placed into an asylum, which is where he died a couple of years later. During this time, Brahms very much supported Clara, and Brahms became a source of great strength and inspiration for Clara, and vice versa. And for the rest of their lives, while this personal relationship continued, it never really flourished in a traditional sense. They never married, and Clara continued to work with Brahms on his compositions. He would send her things and she would respond. So this whole sort of tangled web of connections has a couple of other dimensions. Brahms and Schumann were also great friends of the violinist Joseph Joachim. Joachim had developed a kind of personal motto, Frei, aber einsam, which means free but lonely, I guess referring to the idea that he was unattached in life, and this did lead to a kind of loneliness. About that same time, Brahms adapted Joachim's motto for his own life, and he called that motto Frei, aber froh, free but happy. He was a confirmed bachelor at this point, and I think he was referring to that. A sonata was written by Robert Schumann, Brahms, and the composer Albert Dietrich to pay tribute to this great violinist Joachim, and they used the three notes F, A, and E for Frei, aber einsam, Joachim's motto. When Brahms set about to write the Third Symphony, he adapted that motto to his own and musically used the letters F, A, F. So it's a way of kind of putting a little personal code into a symphonic composition. This actually has a long history. Bach used his own initials, for example, in some keyboard works of his own. And it creates a sense of personal connection to the symphony. We'll listen to that very opening motive now. It's in the top melodic line as we hear this opening chorale of Brahms' Third Symphony. Now we'll continue a bit in the First Symphony, and we'll hear that motto. Again, this opening fanfare. Then underneath the melody that we hear in the violins, we'll hear that same motto, F, A, F, in the bass line. And then we'll hear it in the winds, we'll hear it in the trumpets, we'll hear it in the horns, all as a kind of background to the main melody that we're hearing in the strings in the beginning. The fourth movement of the symphony begins very softly but very dramatically, and it builds to a quite tumultuous climax at the middle. And we think that we're heading for the kind of very dramatic and powerful conclusion that Brahms finished his First Symphony and his Second Symphony with. But instead he does something very different. He begins to wind down, and the music almost takes on a kind of introspective, almost introverted atmosphere as it closes up on itself. And as it gets quieter and quieter and gentler, we hear this motto, the F, A flat, F, once again coming back from the first movement. And that's the last thing we hear. A few simple chords finish the symphony, but it ends in this very quiet and personal space. This Third Symphony of Brahms is not played as often as his other three symphonies. And I think that the reason for that is because it ends quietly. It doesn't make for that spectacular concert ending that one typically expects. And in fact, in this concert, we'll end the first half with this Brahms symphony, allowing us to be in that same reflective state that Brahms leaves us, before we complete the concert with the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto. I think the nature of this symphony and the use of the motto by Brahms pays tribute to this lifelong friendship with Clara Schumann and her husband Robert, and the tribute that they wanted to give to Joachim through the borrowing and the alteration of that musical motto. And in fact, Clara wrote in a letter, once she had seen the score of the Third Symphony, she wrote to Brahms and said, "What a work! What a poem! From start to finish, one is wrapped about with mysterious charm." It was an extraordinary relationship between the three of them. And in fact, there's a very famous movie about it, Song of Love, starring none other than Katharine Hepburn as Clara Schumann. And it's a tale that I think underlines the power of music to portray human emotions. And as we learn more about the personalities involved, gives us an insight into the way the lives interacted and the very personal nature of musical communication. We're looking forward to communicating this symphony with you and sharing its sonic splendor in the Carpenter Theater. See you there.